cruise content is full of extreme advice. Never buy this. Always upgrade. This is a ripoff. This is worth every penny. But most optional cruise purchases are not universally good or bad. The better question is, where should you spend any extra money that you budgeted for your cruise so it actually improves your vacation? Hi, I'm Kat, and I've personally spent my own money on every single optional cruise purchase I'm going to cover today. And I'm not talking about the easy ones. I mean, most people know you can skip the art auctions or overpriced photo packages. I'm talking about the purchases where you'll find really passionate opinions on both sides. But instead of just telling you what I think everybody should do, I want to help you figure out which side makes sense for your cruise. Let's start with one of the most polarizing ones because there are really good reasons on both sides for this one. You've probably heard it 100 times. Just book the cheapest cabin, you're never in the room anyway. And look, for some people, that is completely true. If you wake up, head straight to the pool, come back to sleep, and repeat it every day, an interior cabin can make total sense. But here's what that advice misses. Your cabin is also your retreat, and where you go when the pool deck is packed, and it's also when you want some quiet, or when you want to sit outside and just breathe in without being surrounded by thousands of other people. My question is, what are you actually buying when you spend money on your cabin? Well, you're buying private space, fresh air, natural light, a view, and depending on your itinerary, maybe one of the best seats on the ship. I'll give you an example. We sailed to Alaska twice. First was an interior cabin, and then last month we had a balcony. And I cannot tell you how different that was. Instead of standing on a crowded pool deck, trying to see a glacier over somebody else's head, we had our own space. Even when the weather was bad, we still had floor-to-ceiling panoramic view that most people didn't even see because they didn't want to go up to the pool deck because it was raining and cold. So on that cruise, the balcony wasn't just a room upgrade. It was part of the itinerary. Now, compare that to a short port-heavy Bahamas cruise where you're off the ship most of the day and mostly using a cabin to change and sleep. In that case, the extra money for the balcony might be better spent somewhere else. And my personal take, I'm a balcony person. I've tried interior cabins and I've regretted them almost every time. So here's the decision. Spend more on your cabin when it's going to change how you're going to experience the cruise. Things like scenic itineraries, if you have more sea days, wanting quiet, wanting private outdoor space, or if you have any mobility issues and don't want to fight crowds just to get a little fresh air. And by the way, this applies to the whole video. If your budget only allows for a cheapest interior guarantee with 0 add-ons, that is completely fine. I mean, cruises are designed to include most of the things you need to have an amazing vacation already. What we're talking about here is that if you have some extra vacation budget, where will it make the biggest difference for you? And that's going to differ from person to person. This one is going to get some varying opinions in the comments, and I completely understand why. Priority access programs like the Key on Royal Caribbean or Faster to the Fun on Carnival, they sound fantastic. Nobody wants to start their vacation standing in a long line, and this is one of those purchases where you truly have to ask yourself, what is the specific problem that it's solving for you? Well, you're buying less friction, a smoother embarkation day, and depending on the program, maybe some Wi-Fi, maybe a specialty lunch, maybe priority seating at shows. It might have an easier disembarkation morning. Here's what I would ask before buying one of these. Do you already have loyalty status that comes with priority boarding? Or might you have suite perks that will already get that to you? Do you usually get a good check-in time, which means you're already boarding early? If the answer is yes to even one or two of these, the program might be solving a problem that you don't actually have. And if Wi-Fi is one of the bundled things, and that's the reason you're looking at it, compare the price of that program against buying Wi-Fi on its own. Because sometimes the bundle is close enough to price where the extra perks are essentially free. But other times, what you will find is most cruise lines offer multiple Wi-Fi packages. So it costs an X amount of dollars for one, but if you do 2 devices, it's less. And then for 4 devices, it's a lot less per device. But with the VIP program, usually you have to buy it for everybody in a cabin. So if you're a family of 4 and you have a couple kids, you have to pay for them for a VIP program too. Whereas if Wi-Fi is one of the main perks you're looking at, a 4 device package is going to be a lot cheaper than buying 4 individual Wi-Fi packages. So my take is buy a priority access program only when those specific perks solve a specific frustration for your cruise. Don't buy it because it sounds like a VIP experience. Now this one is a little different because it's actually a whole category of purchases. We're talking about thermal spa passes, private island cabanas, and adult-only areas like the Vibe on Norwegian or Sanctuary and Princess. What ties all of these together is that they're not really about a specific thing you're buying. They're about something else. So what are you buying? Well, you're buying a quiet place, maybe shade, maybe crowd control, a guaranteed place to sit, and real control over your environment on a ship that's full of thousands of people. Because here's the reality of sailing on modern cruise ships, especially on sea days, the pool deck is going to fill up fast, and it doesn't matter if it's a ship with 3,000 people or 7,000 people, chairs are going to disappear quickly, and finding that peaceful spot can feel like a competitive sport. If that kind of crowding frustrates you, then these purchases start to make a lot more sense. A thermal spa is worth it when you're actually going to use it throughout the cruise. You know, those heated loungers, the steam rooms, the therapy pools. On a sailing with several sea days, that daily routine can be one of your favorite parts of the cruise. But if you're only realistically going to stop in once or twice, the value of a week-long thermal spa package is just not there. For private island cabanas, the key question is how many people are splitting it up with you. A cabana shared between 6 people on a packed beach day is a very different value calculation from a cabana for 2 people who plan to swim and explore most of the day. So if you're only going to be sitting at a cabana for an hour, you might be paying a lot for a very expensive place to store your beach bag. Adult areas are probably the most underrated of these 3. On a crowded sailing, you think about spring break, school holidays, peak Caribbean seasons, having that guaranteed quiet adult-only space can completely change the feel of a sea day. So my take is that these purchases are worth it only when they protect that specific kind of vacation experience that you want. The quiet place, the shade, comfort, and space away from the crowd. So that brings us to probably the most argued about optional cruise purchase, and many people calculate it the wrong way. Here's the conversation I hear all the time. Do you drink on vacation? Yes. Well, then you need a drink package. And that sounds right until you actually run the numbers for the specific sailing you're on. So what are you actually buying with a drink package? Well, you're buying convenience. You're buying predictable spending and the freedom to order whatever you want without mentally tracking the bar tab. And those things do have real value for many people. But whether the actual math works depends completely on your cruise days. Not just for your one big vacation day, but the average day across the whole cruise. So think about a sea day. You get up in the morning, you start with a specialty coffee, grab a bottle of water, have a frozen drink by the pool, maybe pick up a soda in the afternoon, a couple of glasses of wine with dinner, a cocktail with a show. On that kind of day, the package is going to save you money. Now picture a port day. You're off the ship at 8 o'clock in the morning and you're going to a beach bar where you might have some drinks there. It's not on the ship, so you have to pay for them. You come back exhausted at 5 o'clock and you have a drink with dinner and you go to sleep. That same package that looked great on a sea day looks very different now. So that's the mistake that most people make. They calculate based on their most fun vacation sea day usually, not the average day across a week with several port stops. A couple of other things change that math too. If you're a Diamond or above on Royal Caribbean, you're already getting free daily drink vouchers. Or if you play in a casino and you have a status there, many casinos on different cruise lines have different rules and different allowances for drinks. And if your fare includes something like Norwegian Free at Sea, Princess Plus, or Celebrity bundled options, then of course the decision was made for you. But again, you want to check whether that bundle makes sense for how you actually cruise. If you are thinking about buying a drink package on Royal Caribbean, I do have a full video on how to save money on it, and I will link it here and in the description so you can check out the actual math and a few more considerations that I think you should look into. Bottom line is, don't just ask yourself whether you drink on vacation. Ask yourself, will I consistently drink every single day throughout the specific cruise to make it work? And if the answer is yes, then buy it. If you're trying to force the math to say yes, then that's your answer right there. For the next most common cruise ship purchase, I would say that my answer a few years ago would have been very different, because cruise ship Wi-Fi used to be painfully slow and just really hard to justify. But it changed a lot, especially on ships now running Starlink service. So what are you actually buying with a Wi-Fi package? Well, you're buying a connection to the outside world. More specifically, many people like to buy peace of mind. And depending on who you are, that may mean different things. If you're self-employed, like I am, and you run a business, you know the anxiety of being completely unreachable for a week. And most times for self-employed people, it's not even a possibility. If you're leaving kids or an aging parent at home, being able to get that quick message through really matters. And if you're traveling with a group that's splitting up across the ship, Wi-Fi becomes less of a luxury and more of a practical tool just to stay in touch with them. At the same time, if the cruise you're going on is really your chance to unplug, and you're on a port-heavy itinerary where your cell phone plan is going to work in port, you might not need a cruise package at all. Check out what your carrier offers for international day passes. We use ours on almost every port day, and it has saved us a lot of money on Wi-Fi costs over the years. My take is that you want to buy the Wi-Fi package when being connected actually improves your vacation or removes real stress, and then skip it when being disconnected is the actual part of the vacation that you're really trying to have. By the way, if you're enjoying this video, go ahead and hit that like button. It really does help me know that you're enjoying this. And also, I would love to hear from you. Which one of these onboard purchases do you always buy without ever thinking twice? I'd love to see what you say. The next optional cruise purchase is also one of the highly debated cruise topics. I personally love a good specialty restaurant on a cruise, but I don't think every specialty dining purchase gives you the same value. So what are you actually buying with specialty dining? Mostly, you're buying atmosphere, occasion, better service, a quieter, more intimate meal, and sometimes truly a better menu. But other times, the menu might not be dramatically better food, because on some ships, the main dining room is wonderful. And sometimes specialty dining might fall flat here and there. So should you buy a dinner at a steakhouse to celebrate something special? That can be completely worth it. We've done that many times. We like to do at least a dinner or two at specialty dining for that intimate, quiet dinner just for the two of us when you don't have people sitting 3 inches away from you. And we eat in the main dining room at the rest of the time. But buying an unlimited dining package because you're worried that the main dining room won't be good enough, well, that's a completely different decision, and that one I would think about carefully. Here's something that many people don't consider. When you buy an unlimited dining package, you start to feel pressure to eat at specialty dining, breakfast, lunch, and dinner, whenever they're open, whatever is available. And after a few days of those heavy multi-course lunches and dinners, it gets exhausting. You start craving something simple, and you realize you're just eating this way because you paid for it. You're trying to get your money's worth, not because you're still enjoying it. Also, on larger ships across all cruise lines, there are so many more complimentary dining options that are really good. On those ships, specialty dining is a nice addition, but it's not a necessity. On smaller ships where they have fewer included options, it can feel a lot more valuable. I do have a whole video on ways to save money on specialty dining, and I'll link it here, but I will also give you 2 quick ideas here. Lunch for specialty dining is one of the best ways to spend money because it's usually 30 to 40% cheaper than dinner, and the menu is very similar, it's just going to be smaller. And then also, purchasing dining on the first day, the embarkation day, will often get you some discounts when they're trying to push everybody into it. So check those two things, but there are way more ways to save money. And again, check out that video that I'll link here. There are plenty of other spending decisions that you're going to run into as you plan your cruise. And if you want to save money without taking away from the experience, then watch my video right here on the 19 hacks to save money on a cruise next. I'll see you over there.